Hey everyone. So, in response to this pandemic and the stay at home orders, a lot of businesses that were shut down and people put out of work by the government, by the way. I know people still putting the narrative or suggestion that COVID did that, but no, COVID didn't do anything. COVID is a virus, not a politician or central planner. I mean, come on, to try to blame a virus for the actions undertaken by governments, I mean, that's already a massive failure in logic to begin with. But as we've heard many times before, there is definitely a disparity in terms of who is going to be greatly or more affected than others. And in this particular incident, it's men, blue collar men in particular, who work in, whether it's the construction trades or many of those other jobs or occupations that you just can't do from home, right? In particular, those in the physical realm, where actual physical labor must take place, which obviously is massively overrepresented by men. And as a man, rightfully so. That's kind of what we do. We pick up the task, the hard physical task, and labor jobs because, well, hey, let's face it, most men are best suited for those kinds of occupations. Now, as you know, I'm not one of those people who wants to play up race or sex related issues or discrepancies. But since the hacks in the media are, I'm definitely going to take advantage of this example, of this opportunity to put the shoe on the other foot and let them get a little taste of their own medicine. Headline out of CBC News, Business. Pandemic measures expose work from home inequality, says StatsCan. Report finds education earnings levels are factors in which households can do jobs from home. This was reported by the Canadian Press, copy and pasted by the CBC, June 8th, 2020. Now, just to clarify before I get into the actual article, you know darn well that if it was women in particular who were suffering the most as a consequence of the lockdowns imposed or mandated by governments, whether provincial or federal, it would be actually contained right within the headline. It'd be women are suffering much worse than men due to COVID-19. You know darn well that would be contained within the headline. And we've got lots of evidence of articles in the past that would lead us to that conclusion. But in this particular case, in this particular example, now it's men. Like I say, in particular, blue collar, working class men. So, they don't want to put that in the headline. You'll have to dig into the actual article to find out what they're actually talking about, which I do. Statistics Canada says that women, people with higher earnings, and those with more education are more likely to be able to work from home and therefore less likely to suffer a loss of income due to measures to limit the spread of COVID-19. In particular, a lot of those administrative or bureaucratic jobs or occupation, many of them, those who work for government, who can basically do their job from home because all they need is an internet connection and a computer. And well, a desk, I guess, right? And maybe a phone line, and yeah, you're good to go. But like I say, if you're a man in particular, or anyone who works in any of the physical trades, well, yeah, you can't do that from home. You can't be a plumber, an electrician, a framer, a roofer, an auto mechanic, etc., 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 from your home. And I'm only just barely scratching the surface of the kind of examples that I'm sure many of you could add to as well. In a report on employment inequality published Monday, it says workers in essential services in jobs that can be done with proper physical distancing measures or are in jobs that can be done from home are much less likely to have been laid off or have their hours reduced since the pandemic began. The results of this study today suggest that the differential in capacity to work from home is likely to reduce work hours more for less educated families and lower income families during the pandemic, which in turn is likely to increase inequality in family earnings and family employment income, Statistics senior economist Renee Morissette, co-author of the report, said in an interview. The agency says about 40% of Canadians are in jobs that can be done from home, and those jobs will continue to be attractive for their work-life balance options even after the pandemic is over. The conclusion matches up with labor force survey results from the end of March that showed that the number of people working from home had risen from the typical 12 to 14% in recent years to about 39%, Morissette said. About 50% of single women have jobs that allow them to work from home, compared with about 1/3 of single men, the report found. while 62% of women in dual income families hold jobs that can be done from home, compared with 38% for men. The report finds the feasibility of working from home rises with income and education level. It says in 54% of the dual earners families who are in the top 10% by earnings that both partners hold jobs that can be done from home. The corresponding percentage for dual earner families who are at the bottom decile is only 8%. Statistics Canada also finds that while less than 30% of primary earners with a high school diploma can work from home, roughly 2/3 of their counterparts with at least a bachelor's degree could do so. The jobs report from Statistics Canada last week noted that in May, employees who earned less than 2/3 of the median wage of $24 per hour saw a 38.1% drop in employment, disproportionately more than workers who earn more. Even though there was a rebound in jobs for low-wage workers in May as restrictions eased, they continued as a group to have a higher share of people working less than half their usual hours due to COVID-19. Statistics Canada says the result may be because their jobs can't easily be done from home. Well, yeah, exactly. Anyways, folks, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. But I mean, think of it. So really, who is benefiting? Okay, Bona, right? Who is benefiting from the government's response, reaction, and policy as a consequence of the outbreak of COVID-19? People in government, the bureaucratic state, women, and those at the higher end of the socioeconomic ladder. The people that actually don't need the help nearly as much as those who aren't getting any help or very minimal help currently, or who have lost their jobs as a consequence of government policy in reaction to COVID-19. So let's get this straight once again. Poor people and men are doing much, much worse than the wealthy, connected, or women. Seems like feminist Trudeau's response and liberal policy worked out very well for the very people or identity groups that he aligns with. Coincidence? I think not. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.